Good afternoon, folks. I'm Joel Smith. I'm the current president of the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame. And welcome to the Ellensburg Hall of Fame. And it's so great to be open and have people come through and see what we've accomplished after 22 years of effort to put this together. We're happy you're here and hoping we can get the word out about these monumental inductees that are going into Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame today. These unprecedented times have made our induction a lot different than it has been in the past. We've usually tried to do something along with our banquet and auction, but today is the day we would have had it at the CW Cirque. So we're glad to have you here. Because of the tremendous research and the writing of the biographies for these special inductees by one of our founding and current members of the Rodeo Hall of Fame, Mike Allen, two wonderful articles appeared in the Ellensburg Daily Record. And I'd like Mike to come up right now. He'll be inducting Mabel Strickland into the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame.
Hi, I'm Mike Allen, and as Joel said, I'm a board member of the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about Mabel Strickland today. She was a cowgirl who competed in Ellensburg in the 1920s and enjoyed considerable success here. But let me start out by just saying a little bit about the role of women in the rodeo before World War II. They had a large presence in the arena in both exhibitions and competitions before World War II. And this included a number of events besides trick riding and flat racing. They also rode broncs and roped, and steer roping and calf roping. And in the case of Mabel Strickland, she also was a steer wrestler or a bulldogger, which as I go along here, you'll marvel at because she weighed about 100 pounds. And let me tell you a little bit about Mabel. She was born in Walla Walla, Washington in 1897 and grew up there. And she was not a ranch-raised cowgirl. She grew up in town, but her dad was a bootmaker. And so he knew all the local ranchers and cowboys, and she was initiated into that world and was just the right size to work as a horse jockey as a teenager. And she raced horses for a guy named Drumheller, and if you go to Walla Walla today, you'll see the Drumheller furniture store there. And when she was 15 or 16, she was racing horses for him. They called that flat racing, and most rodeos had flat racing then. They had tracks and flat racing, and Mabel got involved in that as a teenager, and then as she matured, she entered other rodeo events, and she became a trick rider. She was a bronc rider. There's a photograph of her there on board a bucking bronc. And she was a steer roper. And we got some photographs of that too. And she married a cowboy. She married Hugh Strickland, who was one of the early founders and organizers of professional rodeo. And they rode the rodeo circuit together in the 1920s and 30s. In Ellensburg, Mabel competed in 1926, 1928, 1929, and 1930. So she was here for 4 years. And while she was here, she was a trick rider, which was a contract job. She got a paycheck for that. And she jumped automobiles. They'd bring a car into the arena and loaded with passengers, and she'd jump over the top of it, which was a real crowd pleaser. She also entered the roping, steer roping, and bronc riding competition here. She was a flat racer here, and in 1930 she won the women's relay, and when they talked about a relay then, they didn't mean multiple cowgirls. It was one cowgirl, but she got off of her horse, got onto a new mount, rode it around the arena, then switched mounts 3 times, which is the way flat racing still works in Pendleton and other rodeos that have flat racing today. And so she was pretty good. And she made a living at the sport, which is not an easy feat. And then she went on to Hollywood. And this was not unusual as movies came into play, these rodeo folks figured out they had skills and abilities that could make them a living in Hollywood that was a lot better than riding the rodeo road and that line of work. And when we get to Slim Pickens, you'll see the ultimate example of that here today. But Mabel went to Hollywood, and her great credit was she was in Rhythm on the Range with Bing Crosby, if you've ever heard of that movie. But she was also a stunt woman and worked in several other westerns and made a living there. Then the war came along. She was estranged from her husband in the early 40s. The war came along, and she retired from rodeo. And when we next see her, she's in Arizona after World War II, married to Sam Woodward from Spokane. They moved to Arizona, raised Appaloosa horses. She stayed a cowgirl all her life and was involved in the Appaloosa horse showing and organizations. And she died in 1976, excuse me, which means she lived 79 years, which is a good long life. And our board in July voted to induct Mabel Strickland into the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame, and this formalizes that process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. That's great. I'd like to introduce now Dr. Ken McCrae, who is currently a board member of the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame, and also past arena director for many years with the Ellensburg Rodeo. Dr. Ken's going to introduce and induct Slim Pickens. Dr. Ken.
Well, Slim is probably the most famous person in the room. His background, he was born in Central California and his folks owned a dairy farm. He got the rodeo bug in his early teens, and his family, his folks didn't want him to rodeo very much, and that's where the name came from. He entered the rodeo in some rodeo in California, and he told the arena man that he couldn't use his real name. And the guy says, well, it's going to be Slim Pickens for you this afternoon, no matter what your name is. And so Slim decided that was what his name was going to be, and it was the rest of his life then. He became a bullfighter sort of by accident. At a rodeo, the bullfighter didn't show up. He was an athletic young man, and so he stepped in and did a decent job, I guess, and from then on he took off. Slim had a very unique bullfighting style, and he had a bullfighting costume that was based on the toreadors from Spain, the Sudalites, only he was 6'3" and weighed about 225, so most of the other, he made a pretty good yellow spot out in the arena with his Sudalites on. Slim worked Ellensburg, I think in the middle 40s, 5 times, the last time in 1955. He'd already broke into the movies a little bit. He had a role of a non-speaking cowboy in a 1954 movie, Smokey, and he went on from there. His movie career, he just played himself time after time after time, didn't change his attitude or his dress or his speech, and he became famous. There was, I did a little bit of internet research, and he has 172 movie and TV credits. He wasn't always a buffoon. He played straight shots. I just recently on the old movie channel saw the movie Tom Horn, and Slim was a sheriff. That was a straight role, and he was sympathetic toward the outlaw Tom Horn. Slim worked the movie industry in many. He had major roles in Blazing Saddles, and the one where he rode the atomic bomb down at King. He played Major King Kong in that movie. He was a 1950 or a B-52 pilot. He worked the movies from 1954 until 1982, I think, was his last appearance, and he passed away from brain tumor at the age of 63 in 1983. So we're proud to have Slim in the Hall of Fame, and he's a big addition to us for that.
Thank you, Ken. That's great to have these two historic figures as part of our Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame. And I want to thank you all for coming today. Much appreciated. We're having an open house tomorrow to celebrate the induction of these two people. And, main thing right now is to spread the word and come and visit the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame. We can't have a rodeo this year, but we can have a Rodeo Hall of Fame. So thanks again for coming, and on your way out, please sign our guest book. Thank you very much.